Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in January. Thank you for everybody who gave me feedback on my last monthly wrap up saying that yes, you would like me to keep doing them. Of course, you're probably biased because you're already watching one. But I was asking whether or not people wanted me to incorporate them into my weekly reading wrap ups, and the vast majority of you really didn't care. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this as a standalone video each month, partially because I think it would just be too long if I combined it with like some reviews of books. Let's go ahead and start with the graphics from the story graph. Okay, so the first thing we'll talk about is here on the screen, and that is just a summary of how my month went. This entire graphic is automatically generated by the story graph. I've mentioned that before. And yeah, I had a really good reading month, as can be seen by my average star rating, which was just over 4 stars. And once again, I think they were spot on with picking my favorite 3 books that I read this month, despite the fact that I had more than one that was a 4 star. I read quite a few books, 7, that's a really good number for me, and I did manage to hit my page count goal. Here on the screen, you can see the 7 books that I finished as well as what I rated them. If you want to hear my reviews about these books, you can go and watch my weekly reading wrap-ups from this month. There are 2 on here that I have not discussed yet. One of them is How to Read Novels Like a Professor. I'm honestly just not going to review that book. I didn't even actually give it a star rating because it was something that I was just kind of skimming and browsing through, and I did finish it, but I realized that it wasn't the book I thought it was going to be. The other book that I have not reviewed yet is Invisible Man. That was the viewer pick for this month, so you can already see what I gave it as my star rating, but I will be doing a standalone book review on that, and it will be coming out in the month of February. Finally, I have the visual of all the books that I read this month, so you can see not just the ones that I finished and have 5 star ratings, but you can also see the books that I was currently reading at the end of the month, which was quite a few. And you can also see that I have one book that I paused, which is A Room with a View. And what happened was I started that book on audio and realized that I wanted to physically read it, but it wasn't the next book that I wanted to physically read. And yes, A Room with a View and The Women are both off of my February TBR. I think I had like 3 or 4 days left in the month of January, and I was through with all my January TBR in terms of what I was going to read right now. And so I just went ahead and moved on to February, and I don't have any problem doing that. But those 2 books, The Women in a Room with a View, will both be reviewed in the month of February. So I think that's all I have to say about the books that I read in January. So the next thing I want to do is talk about the books that I didn't read in January because I think I have more thoughts on that than anything else. So here they are. These are all the books that were on my January TBR that I ended up not reading. And I'll talk about for each one why I didn't read them. The first one is Year of Wonders. I mentioned this at some point earlier in January that I decided to put this off because it was just clearly going to be very bleak. It's subtitled A Novel of the Plague. And it also starts out set in autumn, and I decided that, rather than reading this in the bleak winter, I will wait until a slightly cozier time of year to read it. The next book that I decided not to read right now is Evelina by Frances Burney. I was actually really looking forward to this, but decided to put it off because I knew it was an epistolary novel. What I hadn't thought about when I chose this book was just how similar it was going to be to Clarissa, which is my year-long read, which is also an epistolary novel about a young woman written at the same time as this book. So it actually started to feel like I was reading Clarissa again. Even though the letters in this are longer, it's a different story. I just decided that this was just the wrong year to pick up Evelina. So I am actually going to avoid this book for the rest of the year. Sadly, The Ordeal of Richard Feverell ended up falling off my TBR. In fact, I'm going to hold it over here because I'm actually allergic to this book. It's a very old edition and it's just a little too dusty for me. I've tried to do things with it. It wasn't working. I'm actually going to unhaul this edition of it and hope that at some point I'm able to find another edition. Otherwise, I can always read it online, but I didn't feel so pressed to read this book that I felt like picking up an ebook version of it right now. And then the final book that I am unhauling and didn't end up reading is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. And guys, there was so much about this book that wasn't working. To be honest, I got a lot of questions about whether or not I ended up DNFing this book and not reading it because of everything that went on with Neil Gaiman. And the answer is no. The new stuff on Neil Gaiman actually ended up coming out in the evening of the day that I started this book, as if that wasn't a sign. But by the time I started hearing about that, I had already decided to DNF the book. I had read the first two chapters, and chapter two just went to a place that I just thought was weird and gross and was clearly going to be continuing throughout the book because it seemed like it had set up a side character and I did not want to see anything else that that character was going to do. It was just odd to me, and the book was much darker in tone than I thought it was going to be, and quite frankly, I just didn't care. I was actually kind of bored at the end of the second chapter. I don't know. That's what happened with that book long before anything happened with Neil Gaiman. So I didn't even have to decide, like, ethically what I wanted to do with that book. I just wanted to DNF it regardless. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how January went. And the other thing that I'm really happy about, surprisingly, is the number of books that I was willing to just say, no, I don't want to read that right now. And at the end of the day, I got through all of these books and I ended up with an average 4-star for the month. And I think it's because I didn't force myself to read books that I didn't want to read this month. So I'm going to continue to do that each month. I'm going to continue to be willing to say no to my, books on my TBR and move on from them if I want to. And I'm also going to be willing to start my next month's TBR early if I need to. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and enjoy what I have on my February TBR, and it is seeming like I'm probably going to finish it early, so don't be surprised if you get a second TBR game sometime this month, because I'm still not going to just go up to my bookshelves and pick a book off. That's just not me, guys. All right, so the first update in terms of reading challenges that I'm going to do is my bingo board from hell, and this was created by Win, and I will link the announcement video below so that you can learn more about that if you're interested in creating your own bingo board from hell. And you can see on there that I have made some progress on my goals, and there are some things in a slightly different shade of yellow that have been updated. So let's talk about all of it. One is for my 25 in 2025. I made a video of the 25 books that I would really like to read this month, and to accomplish that, I need to average about 2 books a month off this list. One was Invisible Man, that was off my January TBR and was actually the viewer pick for that month. So good job, guys, because I bet you forgot that, but it worked out in the end. And the other one is A Room with a View, because as of filming this, I have finished that. So I don't want to forget to update the board on that, even though it technically wasn't part of January reading, but that doesn't matter. And so yeah, I made progress on that one. The other area I made progress in was in viewer recommendations, and I have, as of the day that I'm filming this, finished and read 2 of my viewer recommendations. One was in January, and that was again Invisible Man, so yay for doubling up. And the other one is my viewer pick for February, and I'll talk about what that is later in this video because I have picked a winner. And if you were in my live stream on this past Monday, then you already know what it is because I read the entire book in one day. That was not my plan. Somehow it just ended up working out. So we'll get to what that book is in just a minute. But every time I do a viewer recommended pick, I will be doing a standalone review on it. As I mentioned earlier, you will be getting the standalone review on Invisible Man in February. You may be getting February's viewer pick in February as well. It just depends on how the filming schedule works out. So that's it. That is all that I've made progress on off of my bingo board this month, which I feel like is not a good sign, and I may need to change my wheel in March to make further progress in all these other areas. That said, you will have seen on my February TBR game that I did update the wheel slightly because I've updated my bingo board slightly. So let's talk about the changes that I've already made on my bingo board. This is why I make plans and not goals. You can see the changes I've made to my bingo board because I've put them this month in a slightly darker yellow, just mainly to remind myself that these were changes to the board. One of them is the 12 projects. This used to say 12 book projects, but I also have author projects that I'm working on. And I realized that if I didn't combine the two categories and make it a bit more broad, that I was just going to end up with a lot of unicorn picks for this. And while that would be okay with me, it would also defeat the purpose of trying to get through my book projects. So from now on my TBR wheel, there will be a space that says projects, and that will just be reminding me that I can be reading either book projects or author projects. For the 12 FOMO, I realized that every now and then I have books that I'm like, ooh, I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to read this book. They're not usually new releases for me. Usually they're book club picks. So this is an opportunity to help me get a book club pick on my TBR. And then sometimes I'll read a book and it'll really make me want to read another book that I already own. So this gives me another way to move that book up a little closer. So it could just be my own fear of missing out. Or sometimes I have somebody like randomly mention, ooh, I saw this on your shelf. You really should read that. So those are the types of things. It can just be anything that I'm like, I need to get this on my TBR this month. Here's my opportunity to do it. I did replace the 52 book club prompt with 12 eras. In terms of the 12 eras and what that means, I recently purchased a book, and I will put it up on the screen, that is published by Penguin Classics, and it includes basically a catalog of the vast majority of the Penguin Classics that they have published, and they have divided it up in different eras of literature from around the world, and they've color-coded it, so I'm going to use my color-coded wheel, and I will pick an era that I'm going to read from if this prompt comes up. And the last area is the 12 recently hauled. This is an area that I think I had previously named 12 previously hauled books. It's basically the same idea. I just don't want to be stuck with having to read like something that I hauled last December or something weird like that. My whole point in having this space on the bingo board was to just make sure that I'm reading at least some of my books closer to the time that I purchased them. All of these things will become more clear each month when I play my TBR game. My TBR game won't be completely updated with these prompts until we get to March, so, watch out for that video coming up. Okay, and I think that's all you need to know about the bingo board from hell. So let's move on to other reading challenges I have going on. You can see here my current 52 book club graphic, if you will, and this is a free graphic that they make and provide, and I have fit all the books that I have finished as of today when I am filming onto this graphic board. So let me share with you real quickly what the books are and what prompt they fill. Hopefully this will help you if you are looking for books to fulfill these prompts. The first book on there is A Room with a View, and that fits the prompt for pun in the title. For prompt 2, which was a character with red hair, I read The Women by Kristen Hanna. Prompt number 4 was a book whose title starts with the letter N. I did Nicholas Nickleby. Prompt 7 is a book that is set in summer, and for that I chose A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. Prompt number 13 was a book whose title has 10 or less letters in it. For that I chose Dead Souls by Nicholas Vogel. I do have a book for prompt 16 that is an author who won the Edgar Award, and again, that one is my viewer pick for the month of February. So you'll have to wait to the end to see what that book is. Prompt number 18 needs to be for a character who could fly, and for that I chose Orbital by Samantha Harvey. Prompt number 19 needed to be a book with short chapters, and The Trees by Percival Everett works for that. One of the chapters in there I think was only a paragraph long, or maybe just a sentence long. Prompt number 21 needed to be a book with a character's name in the title, and Clarissa by Samuel Richardson will be my book for that prompt. Prompt number 25 needed to be a book where a character breaks the fourth wall, and for that I did Invisible Man, Don Quixote, and that is going to be for prompt 38, an adventure story. And prompt 51 is a book that is 300 to 400 pages long, and for that I chose How to Read novel Like a Professor. So that is how my board is looking so far for the 52 book club prompts. I do have a couple of books that I'm about to start. And again, at the end of February, I'll do another update with that, with all the books I finished in February. So you will be able to see what else I have read and how I'm doing on that. I have a couple of other updates on some of my year-long reads. If you want to see my thoughts on my year-long reads like Clarissa or Year of Wonder, that kind of thing, you can see one of my reading wrap-ups in January where I talk about it. The only book that I really want to give an update on is the Pill book. I did decide at the end of January to put that book on pause. So it is back up on my bookshelves, and I decided that instead of breaking the book up and reading one section a day, I really just wanted to read straight through the book. The book is organized a bit differently than I thought it was going to be, and I just felt like I was just unnecessarily dragging the book out and giving myself one extra thing to read every day. In terms of Year of Wonder, I did want to share with you what my song of the month is. I will put it up here on the screen. This was a surprise. In my last weekly reading wrap up, I did share what my favorite songs of each week were going to be, and I thought I was going to have a different favorite for the month, but this song by Philip Glass was one of the last songs that was presented in the month of January. In fact, it may have been the song for January 31st, and it blew me away. This song was so good, so beautiful that I listened to it on repeat over and over again throughout the entire day that I first heard it. And I've listened to it multiple times since then. And if that wasn't high enough praise, there are about 3 or 4 other people who pretty regularly comment on my Discord as they're also reading this along with me. And this was all of ours favorite song of the month, despite the fact that all month long, we each had chosen different songs that were our favorite of the week. So for the last week of January, not only did we all choose this song as our favorite song of the week, we then all thought it was the best song we had listened to all month. So go listen to it if you would like to. I will include a link in the description box below to my playlist, which features all my favorite songs out of the Year of Wonder and also includes this song by Philip Glass. And finally, getting to my TBR game, I have a couple of quick updates to share with you about that, including what the viewer pick is for the month of February. So one of the things that I added to my TBR game this month was a spot where I could potentially get a viewer pick as a prompt. And what that would mean is that you guys, my viewers, would get to vote in the comments of that video on what book you would like me to read that month. And it does have an end date for voting that has already passed for February. So if you didn't get a chance to vote, you will get to vote in the month of March. I have absolutely loved doing this. So thank you to everybody who has left comments on those videos, voting on which book you would like me to read. I've found it a lot of fun to just track and see the numbers add up and that kind of stuff and get surprised by what has been the most popular pick. In January, as I've mentioned, it was Invisible Man, and I did a whole read along for that, and it's still ongoing if you want to join that. And it was a lot of fun, and I had a great time just talking with you guys and still talking with you guys about that book. It was a very hard book to read, very heavy, very dense, very interesting topics and difficult topics to digest. So it was nice to have people to read that with. That said, in February, we got the viewer pick again, and again, you guys voted, and I will share in just a second what got picked. However, after doing it twice, I realized, there's all these people taking time to vote and give their ideas, and then they don't get their choice picked. And so I've decided to make an update with my unicorn. Typically, my unicorn in my TBR game is just a unicorn jar in which I have put random books off my bookshelf, and, if my prompt game doesn't work out, I just have to pick a book from there. What I've decided to do going forward with my unicorn is I'm going to fill it with all the books that get voted on that don't end up winning. So it's going to kind of end up being a loser jar. But I feel like this is another way that your votes get a second chance. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So if you vote on my TBR video for a viewer pick and it didn't get picked, that book is going to go in the TBR jar. But that still leaves me with the books that are on those shelves that you guys didn't even vote for. And there have been a couple. Like, I think I know this much is true. No one voted for that in January. And there have been a couple on my B shelves that no one voted for. So I think at some point this year, I'm going to take all of those books, like the ones that no one wants to read or wants me to read, and I'll do a whole video series on that. So I think that'll be pretty fun. So now the moment you've all been waiting for, or maybe just skipped forward in the video to see, which is what was the viewer pick for the month of February? Well, I shared this during my reading sprint, and guys, it was a close tie. There were quite a few books that were voted on. And I really thought from the beginning, when the votes first started coming in, that Babel was going to win. And it did end up with over 10 votes for it. A lot of people really wanted me to read that book, but it did not end up being our winner. It actually ended up in third place, I think. No, second place. It was pretty close. The book that ended up in third place, which shocked me, was the book that at the very end, as I saw comments coming in, I thought was going to be the winner by that point. So I started out thinking it was going to be Babel. I ended up thinking it was going to be The Boy, the Mole, and the Fox because that got so many votes at the end. You guys really wanted to read me to read that. You felt bad because I had so many thick books on my TBR that you were like, here, we'll give you a thin one. Don't worry about it. I prioritize them and it's a pile of possibilities. If I don't get to all the books, it's fine. But I thank you guys for that thoughtfulness, but that didn't win. The book that ended up winning was kind of an underdog at different points, but then really came in strong in the middle, and that was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. And this actually fits prompts on my bingo board from hell, as well as 52 Book Club, so it works really well. And I actually have already finished the book. I started it during my first reading sprints in the month of February and finished it in one day. And I have so many thoughts on that book. It is disturbing for sure, especially towards the end, but there's a lot of good things to think about in this book, and I'm really going to just take my time to digest it, and I'm looking forward to doing a standalone review on it. I have mentioned before, and I'll reiterate that not for every book that gets picked as a viewer pick am I going to do a whole read along and event for, or even buddy reads on Storygraph and that kind of stuff. And this was one that I knew once it got picked that I wasn't going to do that for. That is the pick for February. I have a lot of thoughts to say about it. I will try and get my standalone review on that out in February, but if not, it's still something you have to look forward to, and it will be coming out in March at the latest. So thank you so much for those of you who voted on that. You got your pick. For those of you who voted on a book before I closed the voting, I have all those names written down, and they will go into the unicorn. And if you didn't get to vote at all, or you didn't get to vote during the time period, don't worry, it will probably come up again in March. Okay, and that is everything. And somehow I think this video is going to manage to not be ridiculously long. So I hope that gives you a good update on how my reading and my plans and my game and everything worked out in the month of January. I really enjoyed doing this video in this format, and hopefully you've enjoyed watching it. If you have, give this video a thumbs up so that I know. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see how my reading goes in February and get those standalone book reviews on Invisible Man and The Bluest Eye. And let me know how your reading went in the month of January, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!